Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Graveyard Shift 2.0. Generally, it's 1.0, 2.0 is a norm. So let us have a Graveyard Shift of 2.0. And it's an important kind of a panel. And we have three excellent panelists with us. I'm not going to introduce them. May I request AVM A Dixit to do his presentation, please. 15 minutes each, and then we will open it for the question and answer session.
So my topic relates to international and regional cooperation in disaster management. This topic is relevant for this, it will emerge when I continue with my presentation. First of all, just to put everything in perspective, what is disaster? It's a calamity, catastrophe, mishap. It can be natural or man-made also. Why we call our talk of disaster management is because sometimes, or rather majority of the times, it is beyond the coping capacity of local community. We have seen in Nepal, we have seen in Kerala and a lot of other places. And there is tremendous amount of loss of life and property. The idea of disaster management is to minimize this. Disaster management is a continuous and integrated process. You have to plan for it, organize, coordinate and implement measures which allow you to mitigate the effects of disaster. Our primary aim is to prevent threat, mitigate risk, and if disaster strikes, achieve a very prompt response. Now most severe impact of disaster happens on to underdeveloped nations because they have very little capacity to go out of their way to provide support or succor to their population. They also have limited institutional measures, and in general there is no long-term vision in those places. That is the reason we come to international disaster management, so that we want to provide support to them. So what I am going to cover today is salient aspects of international and regional cooperation in HADR operations and to study soft power projection potential of India. My scope is written on the slide. I will not run through it. Okay. Disaster management, how it became institutionalized. This is a timeline. However, important to remember is that United Nations has been at it since 1989 until 2015. Between 2005 to 2015, there was a Hyogo framework which was put into place for 10 years. Its effects were studied, and thereafter in 2015, a Sendai framework was signed. It was signed in a place called Sendai, which is a city in Japan, and it was hit by a very major tsunami in March of 2011. Now, Sendai frameworks lays down a voluntary framework which all nations try and follow. It carries out a disaster risk index is given, vulnerability, hazard and exposure. And United Nations General Assembly adopted this in 2015. Now they have laid down 4 priorities. One is understanding risk, strengthening disaster risk governance, investing in disaster risk reduction for resilience, and enhancing reconstruction after the disaster. And these are the global targets: reduce mortality, affected population, economic loss, damage and disruption. At the same time, increase the inherent disaster mechanisms, international cooperation, and achieve risk mitigation systems. Now, what is this? What is the meaning of international HADR operations? So I just want to highlight this. In any kind of international activity, there are 3 participants. One is the affected state, one are the people or the agents of various kinds who are trying to support this, and third is the United Nations. So I'll just briefly cover the roles of these 3 parties. There are certain guiding principles. This is the broad framework. It follows from the Sendai framework. The guiding principle for the affected nation, the nation which is undergoing this disaster, he has right to be the primary responder. He has the responsibility to care for victims, and he can request or consider assistance from the international community. He also should have the disaster management plan, at least in some form, in place. and the disaster mitigation or disaster relief overall direction and coordination and supervision is to be provided by the affected nation. Now the second part is who are the parties who are trying to affect it or rather assisting the states. The states which are assisting can deploy only with consent of affected state. They should follow rules, regulations, customs and traditions of the affected state. They should respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity based on the principle of humanity, neutrality, impartiality and independence, and they should coordinate with affected state authority. They should do no harm basically, and in addition they have to follow international law and if there is any special forces agreement. The third element is United Nations. They have got a very complicated role which is multifaceted. When any disaster happens, the United Nations country team will spearhead all the relief operations which are going to be undertaken. A special coordinator is appointed. He can be the country head or any other person. Then there is it also serves as an interface between local and international responders. And sustainable rehab, which is an important aspect. You see, once you provide succor, so people will get out of the disaster, but the effect of disaster lasts for some time, and rehab and reconstruction also even looks after. Now, this is the fourth dimension. There is some more people in this game, which is called the humanitarian community. They come in the form of domestic and international agencies and organizations. They can be NGOs, some other international organizations who do disaster relief work as part of their CSR activity or something like this. Then there is International Committee of the Red Cross and International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent. They do carry out a very important role in mobilization of resources and assistance. You see, we can put thousands and thousands of liters of water in big jars, but it has to be bottled in small packets. So these kind of very small things also matter in the time of disaster relief operations when they are underway. So these people try and help us in this kind of activity. They also support the UN operations, and by nature of this they have to take consent of the affected state, and they provide wide range of response and services. There are certain regional organizations also like BITS and SARC and various other things. In addition to the UN, some specific disaster relief mechanisms they have adopted. There are certain SOPs or there are some guidelines which are in place. Like ASEAN has got a humanitarian assistance on disaster management center they have developed, and they also undertake this kind of job. SARC has got, BITS has got. There is a Secretariat of Pacific Community, Pacific Islands Forum, and multinational planning and augmentation teams are also in place. Now, I think this slide you must have discussed earlier. There is strategic importance of IOR states because the global power dynamics is shifting to the east, and I don't want to say much on this. Why I wanted to show is this because of this next slide. All the IOR region is highly vulnerable to disaster, natural disaster, because of geographic and geological reasons, and we have seen with good frequency disasters keep striking the various states which are in and around the IOR region. It also so happens that these are all developing nations and they have limited financial clout. They have population pressure. Environment is degrading, global warming is taking place, and in these places resources are being exploited without any consequence of their exploitation being in mind. They also have poor institutional capability and low human development index. So with this, I just cover some thoughts. Whenever disaster happens, you will always find that armed forces are called upon immediately to help out during the disaster relief phase of the disaster management. It is done because armed forces are they are able to mobilize their resources in a timely manner. They are more appropriate, they are highly efficient, they have got good absorptive capacity, achieve coordination, and it's a good cost versus benefit analysis. Now, very shortly, I will just tell you what air power does in a disaster relief scenario, especially what we call HDR operations. Generally, they are the first choice of response because of our reach. It is flexible, accurate, and we are able to do concentrated delivery. The most important part is that they are independent of damaged networks because they are traveling through the medium of air and not limited by time and space. And very fast they can reach, like in Nepal, when the earthquake happened, by that time the news was completely out. The Air Force aircraft had already landed in Kathmandu. They can also provide a multi-spectral response. During preparation, we take part in various exercises and advise to the authorities. During response also, response is majorly looked after by armed forces in conjunction with a lot of other agencies like NDRF. Recovery and mitigation also to some extent we help out. Okay, this is the area of responsibility of Southern Air Command. You can see it is a very vast area, and all the area below this, the Indian Ocean region, any disaster happens, Southern Air Command is called to provide this kind of disaster relief operation. We have the capability of aerial recce, we can carry out search and rescue, we can deploy ground rescue teams, medical teams, which is very, very important, transportation of men, material, equipment, and redistribution by air dropping or landing in very, very difficult places. This is basically the complete area of influence which we have been tasked to look at and provide any kind of disaster relief or any such kind of operation which happens in this complete area. I will just flash some photographs to acquaint the audience here about the capability. We have the second largest fleet of C-17 aircraft, carries about 70 tons, and it is very, very heavily used during disaster relief operations. Very large amount of material, men, equipment is carried in this aircraft, and this is the sum of the photos of the recent Kerala flood where people were rescued from various places in the helicopter. The important thing to note here is a 19-year-old lady. She is sitting in a helicopter and getting rescued. Like this, we give supplies to people who are marooned if we are not able to recover them. That is the kind of thing it is done. You can see such kind of supplies and relief material to stranded people is provided. We even go by boats, or in this photo you can see there is a medical center being set up at the roof of a school. All these photos are of last year's Kerala flood. This is a very unique thing which we go and set up. Two of this we had set up last year. This is a 100-bedded hospital which was set up, and it was so successful that even after the disaster was over and we were asked to withdraw, Kerala government requested us to continue to provide these facilities for two more months. We had carried out operations also in these facilities. This is how the food packets are thrown, and people are picked up from various places. So basically I have just given you a broad outline of international disaster management. What is the framework, what is the role of various agencies, how they cooperate with each other, and in the end I just showed you a glimpse of the use of air power in disaster relief operations. So thank you very much for your attention. So that's all from my side.
Air Marshal Matheswaran, my friend and my mentor, and maybe my colleague also in TPF. I want to congratulate you for this conference, being nicely organized, and fantastic 2 days of interactions, and also inviting me to come here to speak in this conference. And also thank the ambassadors who engaged in Singapore and interacted a number of times. It's very nice to meet all the old friends. I must say that Air Marshal was kind enough to give me a topic which by far is the longest one in terms of title and themes. And not this one, of course, the original one which is 20 years. And each one of them are subjects on their own. And maybe you can have conferences on their own also. So what I'm going to do is going to condense it into a comprehensive theme that will explain the context in which most of these issues like transnational threats in the maritime domain, which are mostly non-traditional or thought to be non-traditional, are playing out in the present context, and how they have evolved to what they are now from the past to the present. Okay, I have to say these things because I am an employee of the US Department of Defense, that whatever I am going to say is mine, nothing to do with this government or any other institutions associated with me. Otherwise, I will not be able to go back to US. So let me put this thing in a perspective. This is something which I borrowed from my own book, which is coming up, Changing Dynamics of Maritime Security. From competition to cooperation and to confrontation. I will explain that briefly. Then to good order at sea, something which Retd has written very elaborately. And what are the opportunities and challenges? Maritime hotspots. It has been covered extensively during these 2 days of presentations. Maritime terrorism and piracy, mostly not covered, but I am not going to do much on that, but I can explain those things in Q&A. And also maritime museums. And I thought it was not done very appropriately in today's conferences, which is something which is very important thanks to South China Sea issues and also emerging issues on the Arctics. So I will briefly mention that. So during the post-Second World War and Cold War era, the primary maritime issues were contestation between traditional state powers. This was building capabilities to project power, and that is why we have this William Corbett's famous dictum, from the sea to the land. I will come back to that again. During the post-Cold War and post-9/11, we saw contestations involving multiple actors, terrorists. We talked about maritime spectaculars. There was discussions that next, the 9/11 attack involved aircrafts. Next spectacular terrorist attack will take place involving maritime assets, or it will happen in the maritime domain. And then crime and piracy, especially in Southeast Asia at that time, incidence of piracy was very high, exceptionally high. That is why Lords of London declared that area as war zone, increased premiums for vessels transiting those areas, and it was a disaster at that time, until Somalia and Nigeria became hotspots for piracy. Now things have changed. We have revisionist dispositions by countries like China and Russia. China suddenly, especially since China, which was actually like showing something called charm offensive, suddenly started showing the dragon's teeth since 2010, asserting its rights in South China Sea. South China Sea includes East China Sea also, and now because of the melting of ice in the Arctics, Russia has also started the similar tendencies, and also on the land, including what is happening in Ukraine and surrounding areas. So this is just a table showing what we are witnessing over the years. Pre-Cold War states mostly expeditionary conquests, colonization, low threshold competition. Outcome was colonies, trade, commerce, order though chaotic. Cold War, state versus state, competition, arms build-up, power position, and maritime regimes, mostly order. Post-Cold War, 9/11, states versus non-state actors. Terrorism at sea, piracy, again piracy versus organized crime, concern about maritime spectaculars, and then investments in responses going to tactics and technology to deter non-state actors. And you will believe that when I say between the end of Cold War and until now, many of the nations who had great maritime powers didn't build any assets. There was only one aircraft carrier built by the United States between that time. Now two. Number of major maritime powers downgraded investments in naval assets, whereas number of other countries started investing, including China. And then we got something called chaos in the littorals, something I learned from one of the famous articles written by my good friend Vijay, which I am going to present very shortly. And now we have state versus non-state actors, especially those challenging the status quo. We also have terrorism, piracy and crime at sea, confrontations, disputes about territory, and challenges to sea and sea communications. Mostly chaos and possibility of armed hostility, specifically in the context that Chinese President few months back asked the armed forces to prepare themselves for a war with the United States over conflicts over South China Sea issues. But we need good order at sea, and this is very obvious. Economic globalization, interdependence, free flow of trade and commerce, maritime interest, maritime resources, and maritime ecology and environment. In the absence of good order, we have problems with navigation and exploitation of resources that will affect critically global trade and commerce. This is something which actually was done initially by Retd. I have adopted and improvised. What are the challenges to good order at sea? LIMO capabilities, low intensity maritime capabilities of asymmetric non-state actors, use of small fast food suicide platforms, even with use of WMDs. A number of examples where non-state actors have tried to use non-state WMD in the maritime domain. And the problem is, this has not disproportionate impact on traditional maritime security. And the chaos in the littorals. Again, I will come back to that, why littoral security is important in the context of maritime security. And now that is why we are talking about maritime irregular warfare. which is operations involving at least one irregular actor or tactic that aim to save maritime environment in at least one of the three ways: to prevent supplies or personal support from reaching an adversary, which is called external operations, to increase the capacity of partner naval and maritime forces. This is from an US perspective, of course, to project tailored US power to directly confront adversary, internal operations. But what MIW is not is humanitarian assistance, which is something which we told about disaster management issues, disaster relief, CMOs, or non-combatant evacuations. Piracy and terrorism, something which we always talk about and it became rampant during post 9/11 incident, and particularly in the context of Southeast Asia. There was a huge concern that pirates and terrorists would work together to carry out attacks, specifically in the state of Malacca, to disrupt supply chain in that part of the world, which would have huge impact on trade and commerce. In particular incident, pirates took over a tanker called Devi Maruin, and it was reported by newspapers, reconfirmed by Singapore's defense minister, that they not only robbed the captain and the crew, they piloted the tanker for some time, at least 30 minutes before they released it, which was actually later proven to be incorrect. But the newspapers, experts, they claimed that pirates were trying to learn how to maneuver large vessels, bring it to the state of Malacca, to the narrowest point, sink it there and close it down. Piracy is an ancient, elusive issue. In my opinion, it could bridge the gap between intention of the terrorists and their maritime capabilities. Most of the terrorist groups do not have maritime capabilities. This is something which could be exploited by the terrorists. There is a possibility there could be an excess. Piracy is largely driven by related economic conditions. The criminal enterprise, elevation to terrorism could be detrimental to that enterprise, but then they can still do it, which we have seen in Somalia at least, and to some extent in Nigeria. And then with competing territorial claims, sensitivities about jurisdictions severely affect anti-piracy operations. We saw that initially when piracy became rampant in Somalia and Nigeria. Instead of having one coordinated operations, every country rushed into having their own assets in those parts of the world. India, China, Singapore, and USA. So you can see that multiple parallel resources carrying out anti-piracy operations in those areas, which was a huge wastage of resources until they started coordinating, which produced results and could stop to those piracy operations. So what are the challenges ahead? Internet and the spread of knowledge. This is very important. We talk about social media and other things. That is also very important in maritime domain. Use of open source information, including tactical information available in the open. When Osama bin Laden was killed in Abbottabad in Pakistan, number of documents were recovered. It is called Abbottabad letters. You can download it from the website of West Point military. It's very interesting to read. They translated those documents. He was very much interested in maritime operations. And there were then in 2010, Singapore government, Singapore Navy put out a bulletin that a terrorist group is interested in using limpet mines to sink a tanker in state of Malacca. And who uses liquid mines among terrorist groups? Only one terrorist group in the world used liquid mines. State actors have used. In fact, you know that first use of liquid mines in the maritime domains was done by French security special forces against Greenpeace in New Zealand. That was the first time it was done. LTT used to do it. And it was known that LTT has trained the Islamia group in Southeast Asia before it was defeated in 2009. So there is definitely lateral learning among the groups. So from 2008 to 2012, there are number of documents available in the internet that is urging that we should target merchant vessels as well as cargo as well as cruise ships, specifically those cruise ships carrying Western travelers.
Anyway.
So, how many minutes? Just one more side. Okay, so I will just go into so there is this is the biggest challenge we are having now. Response mostly regional. Lack of sufficient common interest among littoral as well as user states. Lack of maritime personnel and equipment. Concern of jurisdiction and sovereignty issues. Complicated concepts of law enforcement. Sensitive to multilateral initiatives, RMSI, Regional Maritime Security Initiative, I can explain it afterwards. That's why this is my biggest argument. We put resources at sea to deter non-state actors, try to reduce their capabilities or kill them or capture them, but most of the operations are happening on shore. So is it possible for us to degrade their capabilities at shore? Where are the pirates? Where are the terrorists? They are on land. They spend few hours to carry out their attacks on the sea. So why not invest resources to degrade their resources on the land? So my proposition is to change the focus from the land to the sea as against the old notion of just a sea. So I am not going to go into detail and spend time, I will keep it there. Thank you, sir.
In India, the blue economy, kind of evolving partnership. I am trying to analyze it the way I understand it as a student of international relations. Blue economy today indeed is a buzzword like China or Silk Road or string of pearls, and everybody understands. So blue economy today, if you talk of, is I think it is a fascination. It's a catching up. And Gunter Pauli is he speaks well. His ideas are wonderful. If you ever, I'll encourage all the young students to listen to his YouTube, his book, The Blue Economy, 10 years, 100 innovations, 100 million jobs. Jobs, of course, all of us we need. So we better listen to him. Wonderful. Some of the ideas, particularly I begin from his fascinating ideas, where he says that when we have a cup of coffee, the coffee we have in a cup is only 2% of the coffee that is grown on the field. So between the growth of coffee growing and the cup, 98% of the coffee is somewhere missing in the pipeline. He is trying to retrieve it and cycle it, and he has already experimented many such experiments in Mozambique, I think good many countries and so on. And that's why I think it is not very surprising that he is called as Steve Jobs or Che Guevara also in the current times, the popular man. Now, how do we understand, appreciate the theme of blue economy, both global level and what it means to India? That's what is my mandate here. At the outset, it tries to be very, very promising. promising of productivity, of jobs, of economic growth, and to be hosted at the maritime space. And the most interesting part of it is that it proposes to continue the sustainability and the environmental vitality. It wants to protect it from, proposes to protect it. So obviously it's going to be a very, very futuristic, sustainable and environment friendly development and growth model. And that's where I think Gunter Pauli deserves the recognition that he has got. If you look at the literature of blue economy these days, it's very fantastic actually. If you read some of them, you begin to feel that you have become a billionaire. You feel very, very wealthy about it. Trillions, all billions and trillions and all that. So I was literally, after struggling for 10 days to find out how do I fit India and my maritime scholarship and the billions and the trillions that are floating around. At the end of it, I realized that it's a wonderful journey. I must keep experiencing the journey further. Maybe at the end of it, I may get some billions of dollars or whatever I may get. It's very, very promising. And if you look at it, I think Australia, China, a number of countries have taken, Japan also, number of countries have taken very, very positive blue economy modules. They are already experiencing all that. On the other side of it, if you will see, Barbados also has a blue economy, Barbados blue economy blueprint. Because everything is going blue, Seychelles. Then many of the countries they have there, and there are global conventions also are taking place in prominent places to talk about Japan, Africa, blue economy experience, or China, and so on and so on. Lot of things are happening. It's a huge proposition. And additionally, if you look at the terminologies that are associated with that, is blue economy, blue capital, blue growth, blue strategy, blue revolution, and sustainable development goals, and small island developing state. It's very, very positive and all that. Now, if you look at it, where does it begin and where is it leading us, and where are we in India? How do we connect it? That's what is my focus. Now, if we look at, I think the greater prominence blue economy assumes is after 2012, Rio plus 20. But I remember as a young scholar in 91, 92, I was closely monitoring the first Earth Summit that happened in Brazil. And as a matter of gesture, Brazil showed that they were doing the first Earth Summit, sustainability and those kind of terminologies are beginning to assume space. So what Brazil offered was that they wanted to create what we today also call them as maritime protected areas, MPAs. And what happened of the political economy of MPAs in Brazil, I tried to understand towards sometime around 2010 and something. It was a big controversy. Big controversy in a sense to show to the world that Brazil is serious about sustainability and summit and all that, that we are creating MPAs. And the first Earth Summit and followed by what happened in Brazil was that they occupied good amount of strategic maritime coastal land, coastal mafias. Good many people were displaced from the good coastal lines and all that. And the whole good part of it got transferred into the capitalist machinery for variety of other purposes and all that. That's where the whole story begins. And then 2012, when we come to, I think we are far more serious about sustainability, and particularly White House also being affected by water entering inside and the climate change impacts. Everywhere I think the sensitivity has comparatively grown. And that's where we look at it for India. I take you to slightly different things. I try to put them together. This is a graph of what's happening in our neighborhood. The map you can see. I'm trying to connect to Chabahar Port and Karachi Port on the other side of the eastern coast, from Madras to Mangla Port in Bangladesh. Most of you will remember that 2017, October 29th, our Chabahar port in Iran, which we are managing, that was first phase was commissioned. And as a goodwill gesture, India sent what you call, I think some quantity of 130 million tons of wheat, the goodwill wheat to Afghanistan, just to be donated there. But that was the beginning of operation of India's external port in Iran, which we always visualize as a gateway towards Central Asia and so on. Now what happened as a result of this kind of a opening is that soon after that I was monitoring Pakistani media as to what is the response of the opening of Chabahar port. Good many of them, they felt concerned that the Karachi port has lost business. 50% business it has lost. Then I began to become serious to physically monitor what exactly is the business that is happening there. This graph you see is that you will not get this data anywhere. It's my data I have created, and with the help of my engineering students. So data is my privilege. If you see here, we have nearly 1.5 years of data that were slightly prior to October when the commissioning of the Chabahar port happened and post that part. If you look at it, there's a clear decline of business in Karachi port. We have computed not 50%, it's somewhere around 23% decline in Karachi port. Now that's where I would wonder or imagine or link that perhaps India's Sagarmala or the maritime bigger things that are happening are perhaps part of the entire blue economy imagination or vision that we see is part of this whole process. I again refer to this whole area again. Chabahar is one brilliant case of Indian diplomacy, and I think I must thank the entire diplomatic establishment in India. Somebody must have imagined that from Kandla port we should send wheat to Chabahar port, which will strategically neutralize Karachi port. I mean that's kind of a, but the larger environment of that, if I look at it, next door you have Gwadar and you have the CPEC. And my understanding as a student of international relations is that CPEC is a Chinese $45 billion expenditure there. Then the other side you have Gwadar. From there they are building what you call a strategic oil pipeline to Kashgar, another $20 billion. The other side of it, Oman, both India is also there, so is China, $24 billion. Chinese investment is also there. Djibouti, you have also strategic investments there also. So that's where I think I will draw attention of Professor Kanti Vajpayee, that there is such a lot of investment, Chinese investments there itself, in that small region itself, is a big investment, and nobody is going to allow these investments to simply be blown into controversy where you fight with each other and so on. And that's where I link it to Doklam time. If we remember, both the sides, the Chinese and the Indians, they were uniformed service people, they are ready, and weaponed also heavily both sides. Neither of them were fired, they pushed each other, they threw stones at each other. And in the world history, you will never find a scenario where uniformed soldiers, fully ready, weaponed, and facing the enemy with throwing stones or pushing each other. That means what I heard from this is that both sides are silently and very loudly trying to say, hey, please go back here. Please understand, please go back. Let us not, we will not fight. That's where I look at the images of what you call the investments that are happening, and that's where I slightly take it to a different orientation where I think the infrastructure diplomacy at the global level is at its peak. China has grown to be the largest global contractor. They are building everything everywhere. Now I refer to this gentleman, students, particularly those who are from economics background would relate yourself. Rosenson Roden, European, and he is talking about the idea of a big push. That's in late 1940s and 50s, where he talked about that particularly if you see O to F, that part of it, government must invest. Like your industrial estate, government must create the infrastructure, industrial estate, then the companies will come and produce, they will create employment, production, and then what we call economic growth and development and so on. That's what is now missing actually. Good part of the world, infrastructure is missing. United Nations has recognized this limitation way back in 1950s, but I think it is China which is pushing the entire big push approach, the entire dynamics of infrastructure in a very, very serious manner, and that's what China is setting the agenda, and rest of the countries are following it, and so on. The governmental involvement, infrastructure and governmental involvement, that's the critical variable. Keynes subsequently, John Maynard Keynes subsequently called it as phenomena of mixed economy, and that's where we are looking at the big push approach and so on. I'm using variety of ideas and trying to put them together. I come to the next phenomena here, that Graham Allison talked about the popular Thucydides trap, where one of the reference in which he is talking about is that he used these tools to explain what is the growth dynamics, what guides the growth. Yeah, sure. He is referring to these two breaches. One of them is the American breach. The Americans took 48 months to build it. The second one, the Chinese in Beijing, they built it in 43 hours. That's the scale of difference in the time and so on, and that's where infrastructure, connectivity, technology and speed, all of them are necessary. Innovation and research, they are necessary if at all blue economy is to be created. I will quickly push through. Then if you look at the strategic assets in the sea, simply I am trying to look at the patterns of the seaports in the sea. You have India, you have China, you have South Korea, you have Japan. And Japan, I think itself communicates what it is trying to say. And if at all Japan ever grew as a very strong economic module, it's perhaps is the maritime transport module of the structure that you see here. The other side you have, I'll slightly, now when we translate them, seaports are there, but what is the productivity, how do we convert them into your productivity analysis, is that if we see the larger top ports of the 9 countries I have analyzed here, and we have Mumbai port that is being analyzed with Singapore, Shanghai, and you can see the difference where we stand. Shanghai, if at all 3,000 vessels are coming a day, Mumbai it is less than 300. That's the scale of difference that we have, and this is much larger number of days, and we stand nowhere in the entire process. Now I'll type quickly. My area of larger imagination of blue economy is around the IOR part of it. That's where I look at it. This is my own map, so you will not get it in the net. These are all IOR. When I don't mean it as extended IOR, where South Africa to Gulf of Aden and up to Egypt and up to Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea and all of that I am talking about. Now 2 lakh square kilometer of sea length, and there is seaport, real-time seaports that are being there. And I'll, in the interest of time, now this is where if you look at it, 2 countries, Australia and New Zealand, 2 countries, they represent 21% of the seaports, just 2 countries. East Asia, 56%. So if you Oceania and East Asia, if you put them together, 76% of the seaports in this entire stretch, 44 countries is being managed there by this region. The remaining are, that's what I think Rosenstein tried to talk about it, is that the infrastructure necessary to be built. United Nations has recognized it, or your Great Asian Highways and those kind of formats are necessary requirements. That's where is it most missing is in Africa, and that's where China is. And we cannot blame China for being there. We got to be there if at all we are interested in, and so on. I look at it, what India needs to do, I mean, few things I missed out. We have a for the blue economy experiment, we have 3 operational levels. One at the international level, macro level, we have one clause needs to be strengthened. It needs hugely to be strengthened. And India, I don't consider India to be a predatory power, but we are a soft power, we are a civilizational power, we have a value power, and we should battle our power for what we call pluralizing the international community of the order-based system, strengthen the legal order, and so on. In sea mining also, and the regional level, if at all we look at it, I think our immediate neighborhood, Africa, Gulf of Eden, that area perhaps we have much more stake. Development is necessary. We are having Sagarmala, perhaps needs to be expanded further, and we also need research institutions. I'm afraid we have 6 maritime universities in this country. I'm afraid none of them are worth being reputable research institutes. We don't know our sea very well. Third, at the domestic level, if you look at it, I think that's part of the larger governance limitations of our country. Like coastal, I come from Goa, I'm teaching at BITS-Goa and Goa, it's a sea facing, at a 5-star hotel that was being certified that it is sitting in the, it was a controversy, but it was institutionally legalized. Finally, court after 15 years gave a judgment favoring that. The other side of it, recently we have started cruise transportation. Now you arrive in Goa, a cruise arrived, international tourists are there, local taxi fellows, they said you have to sit down in our taxis, in our own terms of price. So they got them down from a vehicle, and then it was a big controversy. We want tourism, but we don't have the climate of tourism, sustainability of the tourism culture too. So at the local level, we have to, coastal land is critical, strategic, and it needs a efficient business model to be handled. So local level we have to handle this way, international and regional level also we have to handle this module of. I have a Goa Maritime Dialogue session, and thank you so much.
As far as the first one is concerned on the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, 3-4 things need to be kept in mind. One is, what does that country need? More often than not I have seen, I was involved in a disaster relief in Sikkim when the Sikkim earthquake took place. The amount of stuff that landed was phenomenal, but that was not needed there. So we need to actually tailor it to what is needed in that disaster zone. The second is the cooperation and the collaboration that is required. Often we see that there is a competition in this. You look at Maldives, the Indian ship reaches there, the Chinese ship follows. You look at Nepal earthquake, we go in with assistance, the Chinese also try and add up with assistance. There is a competition that develops here. So that is something that we need to manage. And the third thing is on the Quad. Incidentally, many of us may not know this, but Quad was actually a product of the tsunami of 2004. When the 4 countries which are in Quad were involved in relief operations at that time, they felt the need for collaboration and cooperation. That is how Quad came into being. It has taken a different shape and a different connotation people are trying to give it to at this point in time. That's a different ballgame. As far as the talk on maritime irregular warfare is concerned, only one point I wanted to mention, the excellent lecture. The response has to be collaborative in terms of intelligence and operation. That is where he said, we need to degrade the non-state actors on the land. For that you need intelligence. The intelligence may be there, but it needs to be shared. Therefore, it has to be a collaborative effort on sharing of information and also carrying out operations, not only on land, but also in the sea when it happens. The Dr. Pradhan's talk was again illuminating. 3 or 4 points I wanted to mention. Please understand, blue economy is a term which is fairly recent, and that has given rise to ambitions of territorial claims. One of the reasons why South China Sea is prominently being looked after by the Chinese is, one is of course the geographical limit that they have. The second, the moment they get these reefs as part of their territory, you find that they get a EEZ far larger than what it is now. Along with that come the marine resources that they get. So this kind of a blue economy is also giving rise to increased territorial ambitions. Another thing that we need to look at is the need for controlling the exploitation. The regulatory mechanisms are slowly coming into place, but if you don't do it in a regulated manner, you will find that this blue economy will wither away at some point in time. The effect of climate change on blue economy. As the climate changes, there will be tremendous amount of effects on blue economy that needs to be studied. Lastly, UNCLOS to be strengthened. The problem with the UNCLOS is it doesn't have enforcement powers. That is where the problem comes. I don't know how it is going to be done, but it is difficult. Pulling and pushing and throwing stones between India and China, but that was not in Dokulam by the way. The photographs that they put out on the net were from Ladakh area. It didn't pertain to Dokulam. So let us not mistake these two put together. I'll stop here. I'll open the question for the floor.
Hello sir, I have two questions for Dr. R P Pradhan. The first one is that I just want to know, since you mentioned that there are a lot of controversies played by the international organizations in securing or managing the maritime or the sea disputes. So I just want to know currently in 2019, what is the role played by the international organization, if there are any, in terms of solving or managing the disputes in the sea or securing the sea security? That is one. And second is about the big push theory. I thoroughly enjoyed that theory, the Roddenstein's big push theory. But then theoretically, however it sounds brilliant, but then the reason why it was a big success with China is because of the various domestic and other factors, right? Other domestic policies. So I was just wondering how well or how equipped is India in terms of implying the similar kind of big push theory. So even if we do increase our investment, so will we have a similar kind of effect what probably China had or any other country for that matter had?
Arabinda, good presentation. I just want you to answer 2 points. When you talk about irregular warfare, you need to look into maritime domain awareness, which is a very important aspect, which is an operational technological praxis, which basically comes into that. How much of that comes into both regular and irregular warfare? So that is what I want you to throw in. I think there's been very less said about maritime regimes. I know you don't have time because all conferences run out of time and presentations there. So if you can highlight that in terms of how regimes impact upon irregular warfare, there you can bring in SOA Convention, modified SOA Convention, and the controversies about UNCLOS in the South China Sea, and how does it cater to irregular warfare in South China Sea. I want your thoughts on that. Professor Pradhan, good presentation. I think it is without the box presentation, a good one indeed. But I think we have to look into seabed exploration. That comes into cross-oceanic seabed exploration. The Chinese have gone into the 2011 Pomra explosion into the Indian Ocean region. We've been having this talk since 1987, and India has been giving this, the prospective bidding. And how do you think, as what eloquently pointed out by the chair, climate change, and how does it lead to polar caps melting? And when you have offshore platforms in the oceans, how does it come to that? And I think there has also been, back in BITS, we talked about, during this ICSR project, about solar farms put in the oceans there. I thought you will touch on that. If you have time, you can talk on that. Thank you.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you to all the panelists for the lovely presentations. My name is Shubham Swarup, and my question is for Dr. Pradhan, sir. You talked about the Rosenstein-Rodan's big push. I just wanted to clarify whether you were referring to autonomous investment or the development finance of China. And with regards to that, of course, the Chinese development finance is highly seen in Africa to an extent where you can almost call Africa the second continent of China. With regards to that, also in Latin America specifically, there's a big push of development finance by China to the extent that they've put in $150 billion, and comparatively India's investment is just $300 million. And of course you talked about India not being a predatory.
That calm down, let us create order around the rules. And that's where I meant international organizations and so on. One question I would I think somebody asked about Professor Lawrence asked about the seabed and all that. The questions that now ISA for that matter gives the contract for seabed exploration. Now the Americans are not, they have not codified the whole thing, but their companies, they get crushed via the UK based, their affiliated. So the American companies, now legally they cannot come, but they come via the UK support and all that, they suddenly suffers. So the contractors in operation of seabed mining are, some of them are affiliated to Americans, and Americans are not conforming to the international seabed mining rules. And who will tell them to do it? I think it's not the Chinese. I mean, China and the Americans are not in favor of the rule because they have the ability to manipulate the legal limitations today. And India is going to be the biggest beneficiary of rule-based order because we are not proposing to be a global hegemon. Neither of that. So we stand in the middle order, and that's where I think the question was on climate change. I see it as more and more the monsoon patterns and the heat and all those conditions driving the whole narrative, but people are really feeling the impact of climate, water and those kind of things. That's where global sensitivity, popular level, government is one part of it. I think this time it is more people being affected by the climatic conditions. Now there's a greater attention that is moving on. Blue economy, I would understand it is, this kind of pattern change is forcing people to look at the possibilities around the blue economy format. And blue economy, particularly Japan has experimented these solar platforms and number of such experimentations. We can discuss on that. I mean, 20 minutes is hardly anything to talk on a number of sensible things, but I can share that. And particularly, our friend talked about autonomous. I'm happy that you asked a question of autonomous. Autonomous capital is an indigenous capital. Many of you will appreciate. Most of them, they are development economists. They have written for people, not for the government. And lastly, if you talk of Knox, Rodens and Roden, 50s particularly, most of them have talked about Swadeshi capital, your local capital. That's the best way, and nobody comes to help anybody in this world. And that's where I think my response. Latin America has gone through this whole experience, and as far as we are concerned, we have to be careful. That one particular, I think I can sum it up. My intention is that Indian Ocean region is huge opportunity, particularly in littoral countries. My proposition is that we do not have a mechanism or institution to you need capital to build ports. Where is the capital going to come from? If it is coming from Washington, they will have their conditions. If it is coming from Beijing, they will also have their conditions. Let us think slightly differently. Let us all create your Indian Ocean regional bank. Let Somalia and Djibouti and the popular order in these little countries affected what we call collective, sea collective or sea bank or whatever we call it. We have to think slightly, but that's not we need certain institutions to give shape to capital requirement, and my understanding is that largely I am looking at it as formation of India's maritime goodwill curve. That's where we have to take people, their development, take them as stakeholders, and that's where possibly we stand best. Thank you.
Yeah, let me just say something in the light of hand. With climate change. Since I come from USA, climate change is a fake news. Anyway, sorry. I don't know that. Something about Manjari's question, I just want to add. About building infrastructure. You say something about China, and there are a lot of differences. China can do it easily because of the system of governance that they have. Can you imagine how much difficult it is for the Indian government to acquire land to build any infrastructure, not only fast-track railway lines or build a steel plant? I come from a place called Jagatsinghpur where POSCO was trying to build the world's largest steel plant since last 12 years. I was in Singapore at the time. They consulted me to have a risk assessment for terrorist criminal threat. I was amused. I told them there is nothing like that. Maoists were not there at the time, that particular area. I said, your biggest challenge will be getting land. And they could not do it. They put it back. So, and why it happens? Because we are a democracy. People go to the courts. And I can tell you, because I come from that area, 90% of the time, the productivity of those lands are almost zero, below sustenance level. But then I have seen pictures in videos in YouTube. Women came out, beat their hearts and say they are taking away a rice bowl. They don't actually cook 2 times a day. They don't have electricity in their rooms. POSCO was trying to give them employment, training, compensation, but they cannot do it. We are a democracy. We cannot dispossess them on good course. In China, they wanted to do it, get out, and they go out. So we cannot just compare it that way. We have to go through that process. And do you want to do it by force? No, we cannot do it. It will take time, but it will happen. Somehow or other it will happen. It will take time. So we have to live with that. Anyway, that's my own take. Talking about maritime domain awareness, where is my friend who asked me this question? Anyway, Lawrence was there in Singapore when we went to a technology demonstration by a Australian agency about maritime domain awareness technologies. They were developing sensors which will be all over the ocean, similar to land domain awareness which Army uses. And I was amused. I said, why do you want to do it? Against who? You know, at that time the talk was that terrorists are going to use it. They were going to carry out attacks. I was in San Francisco. I actually worked with the Singapore government and US-based organization, National Naval Project Institute, for 8 years, trying to develop technologies to deter non-state actors developing technologies to carry out attacks. Singapore's most vulnerable maritime asset was Jurong Island, because they have their power grids, petroleum storage points, everything. And then Singapore will be nowhere if the Jurong Island is disabled. So that was in 2010. I gave that example that Singapore maybe gave a warning that some terrorist groups are developing capabilities to use impact mines to sink in Madagascar. And I was the only subject matter specialist for terrorist groups. They were discussing about technologies, Singapore group, that they are developing a technology that will create artificial waves against a vessel that is coming to the shore, which will push it back. I said, first of all, can you tell me any group which has the ability, because Jurong Island is so protected, it is impossible for anyone unidentified vessel to come over to that. So first of all, you have to understand what is the threat, who are the groups which are capable of doing it, and then develop technologies. That's why I was talking about putting resources at the wrong places, and I was emphasizing, why not deal with them on the land? Why put resources in the wrong places? So, maritime domain awareness, I thought, was putting resources in the wrong places. That too in a area which is land is smaller than the sea waters. Talking about regimes, one plus you mentioned, sir. How do now in South China Sea, US enforces on freedom and navigation issues. I have just completed a book on that, which will be published in December. It's already in publication. I have examined basically why freedom of navigation and why USA is appropriated the authority to enforce it. And it's the only country which is doing it. They do it deliberately, they say we are doing it deliberately and we will keep continuing to do that. But they are not the signatory to that $1+. So where is the legitimacy of these operations? If you don't have, you are not a signatory to that, then what is the alternative? I didn't have the time to show it to you, but I have one example like this. Say some regional initiatives are very successful, and one of them is in Southeast Asia itself, which is called RICA, Regional Cooperation Agreement on Combating Armed Robbery at Sea. So it can be possible when you understand commonalities in danger, threats, and interests. It is possible.
Yes, sir. And since I have given him a choice of one question, I'll also give you the chance of one question. So I'll come back.
Well, mine is not really a question, but it is for Professor Acharya. You mentioned that 9/11 took place, and next will be maritime terrorism. I'd just like to draw your attention to the USS Cole attack in the port of Retd in December 2000, where a suicide bomber, he actually went and hit the destroyer, 17 people aboard dead. So that was the first instance of a recorded maritime terrorism. The second one, I'm surprised you didn't mention 26/11, the Mumbai terror attack. Completely planned in the maritime domain, started from maritime domain and finally landed upon the shores of Mumbai. So we already have two very big incidents. Thirdly, I have a little different definition for this non-state actor. To my mind, there are no non-state actors in the world. They are all covertly or overtly supported by the state. So I don't think that we should live under this misnomer that there is something called a non-state actor. You can say it for the sake because you don't want to name the country. But otherwise, if you see the Peshawar school attack, when the FIA did the investigation, Tariq Khosa, who was the FIA head, he was heading the investigation. And his investigation report is a very bold guy. I think probably Ragul Pudle better than I do. I met him a few times. And in that report, in the conclusion, he said that there are no non-state actors either in Pakistan or anywhere. They are all supported by the state, whether we agree with this. And he said that in this case, I can say this with conviction, with full knowledge of what can happen to me as a result, that it is completely state-supported terrorism for which subsequently he lost his job. So I think that we have to be very careful about categorizing this non-state and state actor. Even in piracy, where does the money go? I think Sudarshan, you brought on this. They're all on the land. So and this USS Cole attack was Al-Qaeda. They owned it up. So was the case of Lashkar-e-Taiba having it, done the Mumbai attack. And when Kasab was being asked a question that why didn't you go to the naval dockyard, which was next door, you know what was his answer? Immediate answer, without thinking. He said, "Uske liye dusri team taiyar kar rahe hain." I was present when he made this answer. So the point is that by categorizing it this way, we might not be able to shame those people who are actually involved in this. So I just wanted to make this one point. Thank you.
Yeah, last question of the day.
Thank you for your sharing, sir. So you mentioned about the lack of control on the necessities which enter during disasters. during the 2015 December floods, the same thing happened wherein we got 30 barrels from Malaysia, but only 15 were actually used, and there was no other news about the rest 15 as to where it went. So we developed an app or a Google Doc form, so in order to integrate all these necessities which come into Tamil Nadu at that point of time, but we were not able to integrate it in a national level. And do you think how the civil society and the pressure groups and the government can work together to solve this issue? Because I think it got repeated again in the Kerala floods, and I think it will keep repeating again and again every time we face floods or any sort of disaster. So yes, sir.
The only answer to that is the requirements vary with the kind of incident. In earthquake, you will need different kind of things. In flood, you will need different kind of things. In any other thing, any other disaster like nuclear disaster that took place in Japan, you will need different kind of things. So it will be extremely difficult for you to create something like this, number one. Second thing is, you don't know which are the countries they are going to respond. So if you want to put it on an international level, firstly you need to have a cooperative mechanism which I mentioned to you. Secondly, you need to have people who should be responding to this, who are closer by responding to this, should be on it. So it's a long drawn process. One can try it, but I can only wish you best of luck. But we can try it. Let's see if we can do something about it. Sorry? In India? In India it's possible. I think that is the thing. I'll take it back and let me see how we can.
This is a very good suggestion. And when this Kerala floods were happening, that time WhatsApp was being used extensively to give us information who is stuck where, what item is needed where. You see, this National Disaster Management Act and setting up of NDRF is a very recent. Now all the states, they also have their disaster management authorities. They are working in this direction, how to make the item reach the most needy person in the correct time. That is what I think you mean by this. And this is happening, and I think, God forbid, whenever we have next event like this, you will certainly find that these kind of things will be used.
All that is left for me is to thank the panelists for your session. Oh.
I'm sorry, I just want to say one thing about this whole attack. Definitely it's a maritime attack or an incident that took place in a maritime domain. But if you look at, I mentioned that. Where did they come from? They came from the land. They used the technology that was used in the land. So I would differentiate that if I go.
It always come from land.
No, they came from the land. They came from the land. Anyway, let's go back to your second question, which is very important from a discursive perspective. Use of non-state actors or use of terrorists is a very debatable one, and we cannot actually indulge in that for a long time. You talked about Mumbai attacks. I was in Mumbai on 27th November. I was going to go there because one of the Singapore citizens was in the hotel private, and I have seen that in fact they came through the sea. They came from the sea, through the sea. The attack was, sea was the medium through which the attack was delivered on the land. So, I don't know whether we call it a maritime terrorist attack or not. Point is, how long can we go on talking about, I have interviewed Kasar, I'm telling you. I have also talked to him.
We can continue the discussion subsequently because I think we are running short of time. We can have one-on-one on this after the tea break and the tea break. All that remains for me is to thank the panelists for their excellent presentations and also for the active participation from the audience. Thank you.